In video 5, we're going to discuss a very, very, very important error that you will see guaranteed on the writing section of the SAT, and that error is subject-verb agreement. And subject-verb agreement basically says you need to make sure your subject and your verb are of the same number. This mostly applies to present tense, because that's where you're going to see conjugation. In simple past tense, you're not really going to see it. Obviously, in tenses where you have got a helping verb or an auxiliary verb, which I haven't talked about yet, I will eventually, you'll see this. But basically, you're going to see this where you have present tense, especially it to be verbs, so is and are. And the idea here is that most of the time, if you've got pretty much any subject except for he, she, it, and most of the time it's going to be they, a plural subject, you have to take a plural verb. So in the case of, let's say, walk, it would be they walk, right? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to video number 4 where I discuss conjugating English verbs. For the singular third person, he, she, it, this is the only time where it changes. In this case, it would be he, she, it walks. And what's confusing about this terminology is that the singular noun goes with a singular verb, but that singular verb is generally going to be conjugated with an S at the end of it, which makes it look like it's plural, because we're used to nouns ending with S being plural. But the problem is that this is a singular verb, and by singular we mean it goes with a singular subject. Over here there is no S, but this is plural because it goes with a plural subject. So let's look at some examples, some sentences I created that will show the various kinds of subject-verb agreement errors you'll see on the SAT. Some of them are going to be very simple and they're going to be a little bit too easy for the SAT. Others will look a little closer to what you'll see on an actual SAT question, like an error ID or an improving sentence. First one, John walked to the store. Alright, we have a noun, and here's our subject, and it's singular. And this is its verb, walk. Right, so this is and what I mentioned before, this whole thing is called the predicate. You don't exactly need to know that, but just to mention it. And this is the verb, a part of the predicate. Now, John walk. Now, John is singular, so we need a singular verb. Is this singular? No. Just like I mentioned above, it's got to be he, she, it, or John, or whatever, walks. So we're actually going to change this to John walks to the store. Next one, John and Mary walks to the store. Well, what's our subject here? Well, we've got John and Mary. This is called a compound subject. And a compound subject is nouns connected with this conjunction and we'll talk much more about conjunctions later. But a compound subject is always going to be plural. So in this case, we have John and Mary, which is plural, and we've got walks, which is our verb. Is walks plural? No, walks is singular. So we need to get rid of the S and make it John and Mary walk to the store, and that would be correct. Next, John or the boys steal the money. And I left this blank to leave it up to us. What do we put here? Do we put an S here or not? Well, this is about the rules for or. When you have or, it does not compound the subject. It keeps them separate. Now, the way it works for this, you don't then use plural automatically. What you do is you look at the noun closest to the verb, so in this case, the boys, and the verb will then take that form. So since boys is plural, we're going to have a plural form of the verb, which means this just stays steal. So John or the boys steal the money. On the other hand, if we have John or the boy steal the money, in this case, boy is next to the verb, so this becomes steals the money. John or the boy steals the money. Now this one's not exactly what you'll see on the SAT because of the neither, but I just want to emphasize the point anyway. Neither the boys nor John steal the money. What would it be here? Well, again, nor is just the same thing as or. It's just a kind of a negative conjunction. That probably has a fancier name, I don't know it, but so we're going to look at the noun next to the verb, and that's John, so that's singular, so we need this to be steal. So neither the boys nor John steals the money. This is a very kind of an odd sentence because of the way it's written here, where neither the boys nor John, but where this is plural and then this is singular. But in any event, as you can see, this just shows the rule. The verb, the noun closest to the verb, takes determines how it's conjugated. Next, the theory is exciting. Okay, theory, that's our noun, that's singular. Here's our verb, is, and that's okay, right? Is singular, no problem. What about the next one? The theory about the mating habits of gorillas, blank exciting. Now, this is something, I'm going to star this, because this is much closer to something you'll see on the SAT. Let's break this down. The first thing to ask yourself assuming, let's pretend, this was the thing that's underlined, this verb here. What is the subject of the sentence? You might say, oh, it's the gorillas. Well, wait a minute, hold on. This sentence is just like this one. I've only added this prepositional phrase, and we'll talk about prepositions later in video 7. This is a prepositional phrase, and this is never going to contain your subject. Your subject is never going to be in a prepositional phrase. What does that mean? It means that this, the theory, is the subject. And again, theory, just like before, is singular, so that means the verb that must go with it must also be singular. So the answer here is. Now this is a lot closer to what you'll see on the SAT. On the SAT, you might see that they'll have are here, and it's underlined. Are is wrong. It may sound or look right because you have gorillas, and gorillas are, but the problem is gorillas is not the subject. The theory is. And one of the things you can do as a way to help you figure out what the verb should be is you can cross out that prepositional phrase and read the sentence. Now we have, our original sentence. The theory is exciting, right? It shouldn't change because of this prepositional phrase. Moving on, the team win or wins the game. Well, this is an example, like I discussed briefly in video number 2, of collective nouns, right? Team is a collective noun, and as a collective noun, it's singular. Therefore, the verb must be singular, thus this must be the team wins. The next one's a preview of something I'm going to discuss when I go over pronouns and specifically indefinite pronouns. But this is, I'm going to preview it now because it is very, very important and one that people trip up on a lot. Everybody blank to eat. Is it like or likes? Well, in this case, and in all cases, everybody is actually singular. Think of actually this should be, typo, everybody. Everybody likes to eat, right? So if you read it like that, it actually sounds right. So indefinite pronouns like everybody, each, everyone, I'll give you a lot of examples in the video when I discuss indefinite pronouns. These are singular. That means they take singular verbs, and they also take singular pronouns. And we'll talk about that in pronoun agreement. But this is one of the really, I'm going to mark this too, star this too, because this is one of the ones that people miss a lot, because they're tricky. Frankly, sometimes when we're using indefinite pronouns and we're using other pronouns later in the sentence, we slip. That's just the way we talk. There's a whole controversy about whether we use singular or plural nouns because it's I don't want to get into it. Basically, for the purposes of the SAT, this is the position they take, and that's the one we're going to go with. Alright, so this is going to be a to be verb here. There blank 3 kinds of people. Now it's going to be there is 3 kinds of people or there are. And the trick with this is you look for the subject. What is the subject? The subject is never going to be there. The subject is 3 kinds. This is plural, so that means our verb must be plural, so it's there are. There are 3 kinds of people. So even if the noun comes after the verb, it's still going to be conjugated as if it were before, right? So there are 3 kinds of people. My baby brother, who always got bad grades, blank in detention today. So this is going to be another to be verb. Now this is an example of where you have a parenthetical addition here, a parenthetical reference that's describing brother. But even though you've got this, this is just like if you had a prepositional phrase. You can imagine just crossing this out and ignoring it and figuring out which verb to use when you don't have it. So my baby brother blank in detention today. So is in detention today, right? It doesn't matter that grades is here and it's plural because that is not the subject. My baby brother is the subject. So therefore the verb is going to be is. And the last one we're going to discuss is this one. Differences in the job market blank attributed to political factors. Now if you saw this on an SAT, you'll probably see the word is here underlined. Is right? No. Again, we have a prepositional phrase in the job market. So that is not our subject. Our subject is actually differences, right? It's our subject. And that means that the verb that goes with this must also be, this is plural, and the verb that must go with the subject differences must also be plural, so it's are. So differences are attributed to political factors. Differences in the job market are attributed to political factors. So that is the breakdown of the various errors, kind of subject-verb agreement errors you'll see. Obviously, this is a very important error, one you're going to see a lot, and in a lot of other future grammar videos and when I go over tests and other questions, you're going to see this pop up again and again. So learn to recognize this and be ready for it because I guarantee you it will be on the test. So learn it and you'll have this error down cold.